Maybe one word to say that when it comes to addressing cross-border questions of regulatory divergence and overlap, the approach we have taken, as just said, was outward-looking, and that rests on recognition and reliance, and this is something that reflects very much our experience in building the single market. And this approach, I have to say, is the approach that has won international support. The G20, the FSB approach on cross-border consistency are clear. Recognition, or as G20 calls it, difference, is the internationally agreed solution to prevent overlapping or incompatible measures and avoid unnecessary or detrimental extraterritorial effects. We also know that not all of the EU foreign partners are very fond of difference as an approach. At the same time, we are reassured by the feedback we receive from our supervisory community that this is the most sustainable way forward in today's increasing multipolar markets. Of course, mutual recognition does not come across as the grand prize of regulatory convergence, but our experiences suggest that getting to that point is not always a straightforward process, and I just mentioned one example. And not always can reciprocity in treatment be either offered by our trading partners. Under the EU approach, the recognition and reliance, whether mutual or not, does not imply, I alluded to this, a line-by-line equivalence. We focus indeed on outcome-based equivalence. A word maybe about the international standard setters. You have discussed the issue of the relationship, as Lord Hill put it to me when he arrived, just to tell an anecdote. The first question he asked me is, who elected the FSB? And who are they responsible to? Which are perfectly valid questions from a UK parliamentarian. And of course, the answer in both cases is nobody and nobody. And that's the limit. I read the thing about two weeks ago. As you may know, we are discussing within the FSB issues of whether we should, how we should deal with systemic insurers. And I read a very strong statement of a very prominent US congressman saying, well, that basically technocrats, international technocrats can do whatever they want, but that will simply not apply in the US because Congress will not agree to it, which is fine. And similarly, I have kept, and I read when I'm depressed, the statement issued by the European Parliament when they received the assessment of Basel. You're materially non-compliant. So what? We've been elected to make laws in Europe. We have adapted your standards as we see best fit for the prosperity of the European economy. And all this, I think, is perfectly legitimate, should be recognized. That doesn't make necessarily the work of people like me easy, because then, of course, you have to reconcile this with a way to work with your partners in foreign jurisdiction. But I think in the end of the day, that's the essence of democracy. A word maybe again on these issues of how we interrelate with third countries. Each time, what we need is a proper assessment before concluding whether a third country's rule or supervisions are equivalent to ours. Don't forget that we're not talking about a formal assessment of a third party's rulebook. We're talking also about how this rulebook is implemented and enforced. And what we want is to be able to engage into a relationship. This is very much what is at the core. This is why it's rightly complicated and difficult with the US. Since in the end of the day, you should not only be confident that in a sense the other party's rules are good enough, you should also be confident that they are implemented in a way that is consistent, and you should be confident that they achieve a reasonable level playing field for the players. So if these three criteria are met, then you can grant equivalence because you're confident that you have a level playing field where competition can play, and you're confident that you do not import unduly risks in your system. In doing all this, we are confident that we are on the right tracks, but we want also and we can also do better. Not so much by insisting on a one-size-fits-all model for all equivalence provisions, which even if duly implemented would have practical limitations as well. But we think that increased transparency around the equivalence assessment, as very well put forward by Judith, is indeed something that could help. And we are working on that. We also want to improve the way we interact with authorities from third countries on their assessment, and this will be part of much more articulated and accountable regulatory cooperation frameworks. Finally, we are also keen to hear from our stakeholders about the practical problems that they experience in this area. Some valuable input has been already collected in the context of the CMU consultation, because I fully agree with what Judith said. I mean, CMU is an internal market project, but it has also a very strong international and external dimension. And we look forward to any further contributions, providing evidence of frictions, arbitrage, duplications. So I think I should stop here because you gave me 10 minutes, I took 15, and thank you for your attention.